You're about to embark upon the Great Crusade. The eyes of the world are upon you. The hope and prayers of liberty-loving people everywhere march with you. In company with our brave allies and brothers in arms, you'll bring about the destruction of the German war machine, the elimination of Nazi tyranny over the oppressed peoples of Europe, and security for ourselves in a free world. Your task will not be an easy one. Your enemy is well-trained, well-equipped, and battle-hardened. He will fight savagely. But the free men of the world are marching together and will accept nothing less than full victory. This is what Supreme Allied Commander General Dwight D. Eisenhower wrote in a letter to the Allied forces before he launched the largest seaborne invasion in history. Everyone who has studied the Second World War knows about D-Day and maybe Operation Overlord as a whole, though one beach landing tends to steal the spotlight from the other four because of how bloody it was. This was the stretch of coast codenamed Omaha, where the American 5th Corps suffered as many as 6,000 casualties in just one day. But we're not going to discuss Omaha today. Today, we shed light on Normandy's other beaches, beginning at Utah and working our way eastward to the beach codenamed Sword. The beach codenamed Utah was located on France's Cotentin Peninsula. While American General Omar Bradley commanded all US forces assaulting Utah and Omaha, one Joseph Lawton Collins led the 7th Corps at Utah specifically. Collins was selected because he had experience with amphibious operations in the Pacific, notably against the Japanese on Guadalcanal and New Georgia, where he earned the nickname Lightning Joe. His objective was to establish a beachhead on the peninsula and block the Germans' path to the port city of Cherbourg on the peninsula's tip. Standing against Lightning Joe was Generalleutnant Karl-Wilhelm von Schlieben in command of the 70th Static Infantry Division, which had no combat experience and included many non-German conscripts. Further inland, von Schlieben kept the 91st Infantry Division and the 6th Parachute Regiment in reserve. The Germans littered Utah Beach with mines, barbed wire, wooden stakes, anti-tank obstacles, and plenty more. Unlike Omaha, there weren't steep cliffs for von Schlieben to use to his advantage, so he flooded the flat land behind the beach to slow the Allies down. Following highly effective aerial bombing raids, which commenced just after midnight, paratroopers of the 101st Airborne Division and 82nd Airborne Division began landing in the Bocage countryside behind Utah, tasked with destroying or capturing bridges over the Douve and Mer de Rey rivers. They also set about capturing the crucial crossroad town of Saint-Marc-Église. Now, the amphibious landing could begin. Carrying and escorting the troops was the US naval unit Force U, which was composed of 18 warships. Approaching the beach just before 6 in the morning, Force U started bombarding it, and the destroyer, USS Corrie, hit a landmine and sunk while trying to avoid German battery fire. Aboard the USS Quincy, a man named Richard Strout watched an American destroyer go down, possibly USS Corrie, and wrote, "It's heartbreaking to watch. Distress signals blink. A cloud of steam or smoke appears. A sister ship moves in right under the fire to pick up survivors." 4 US companies touched sand at around 6:30 a.m., but their landing craft had been pushed south by strong currents, and they landed some 1.8 kilometers or 1.1 miles away from where they had intended to. This turned out to be a stroke of luck, as this new landing site was poorly defended. Subsequent units were to disembark there. These were engineers and demolition teams who cleared the way for armored landing craft and tanks. By the time that M4 Sherman tanks and Dozer tanks of the 70th Tank Battalion had arrived, the infantry had already smashed through the flimsy defense on the beach. By 8:30 a.m., the landing area was secure, opening the way for wave after wave of Allied reinforcements. Now, the infantry and armored units fought their way inland to link up with the paratroopers and capture any German-held towns. Some paratrooper units had already seized these towns, however, making things even easier for the seaborne invasion force. Popperville, for instance, had been captured by the undersized 501st Parachute Infantry Regiment before US reinforcements could arrive, so the regiment advanced on the commune of Saint-Côme-du-Mont instead. Here, the 501st ran into 3,000 Fallschirmjäger troops who rebounded the Americans. Meanwhile, the 82nd Airborne Division was fighting in Saint-Mère-Église and eagerly awaiting reinforcements. Infantry and armoured units trying to reach the 82nd ran into the German front line, forcing the Allies to bolster the 82nd via gliders instead. This did not go so well. The Germans shot many of them out of the air, and few of the surviving gliders ultimately reached their targets. The 82nd wasn't relieved until the 90th Infantry Division, which was originally supposed to advance on Cherbourg, arrived at the town that afternoon. Still, opposed by inexperienced defending forces and with a little luck on his side, Lightning Joe pushed some 10 kilometers or 6 miles inland on the 6th of June alone, with his infantry unit sustaining just 197 casualties. Joe's parachute and glider troops had it a bit rougher though, suffering 2,500 casualties, while armoured and naval forces suffered around 700 in total. It's unclear how many of von Schlieben's 12,000 men became casualties of the Utah landing. By the end of June, the Cotentin Peninsula and the city of Cherbourg were in Allied hands, and von Schlieben had raised a white flag and been taken as a POW. The US Army's historical division reflected on the American forces' success at Utah in a 1948 publication titled Utah Beach to Cherbourg. The relative ease with which the assault on Utah Beach was accomplished was surprising even to the attackers, and gave the lie to the touted impregnability of the Atlantic Wall. The 4th Division's losses for D-Day were astonishingly low. Not less noteworthy than the small losses was the speed of the landing. A total of 20,000 troops and 1,700 vehicles reached Utah Beach by the end of 6 June. Between Utah Beach and Omaha were swamps and other difficult terrains, as well as a headland named Pointe du Hoc, where the Allies made a smaller, lesser-known D-Day landing. Here, the Germans were constructing a coastal battery of 6 155mm howitzers of French design, with 2 of the guns being casemated. These artillery pieces posed a massive threat to Allied invasion forces at both Utah and Omaha. The battery stood upon a sheer cliff over a narrow strip of beach and was manned by 85 artillerymen and 125 infantrymen. German machine gun nests covered the battery's flanks. To neutralize Pointe du Hoc, the Allies called in Lieutenant Colonel James Rudder of the US Rangers. According to General Omar Bradley, no soldier in my command has ever been wished a more difficult task than that which befell the 34-year-old commander of this provisional Ranger force. On D-Day, one of Rudder's 2 Ranger battalions fell behind and landed their amphibious craft on Omaha Beach instead of the narrow beach below Pointe du Hoc, while most of the 2nd Battalion survived German fire and reached their original objective by 7 AM. Now, however, the Rangers had to overcome a 30-meter or 100-foot cliff. In the words of Rear Admiral John L. Hall, 3 old women with brooms could keep the Rangers from climbing that cliff. Rocket launchers mounted on DUKW amphibious trucks fired grappling hooks up the cliffside, while Allied ships pummeled the battery from afar, preventing the defenders from firing down on the Rangers as they climbed the ropes and rolled out ladders for their comrades. Sustaining an additional 15 casualties from the ascent, the Rangers soon breached the crest and began gunning their way through the battery. Only, the howitzers weren't there. The Germans had already removed them. After the Rangers had cleared the battery and regrouped, Rudder sent out patrols to search for the missing guns, finding 5 of them in a nearby orchard and disabling them with thermite grenades. For the rest of the day, the Rangers repelled several German counterattacks, with just 1 patrol from the 5th Battalion reaching the battery to reinforce the 2nd. By the following morning, Rudder's force had been reduced from 260 men to 90. While Bradley oversaw the US landing forces at Utah and Omaha, British General Sir Miles Dempsey commanded the British, Canadians, and their allies at Gold, Juno, and Sword. At Gold specifically, Lieutenant General Gerard Bucknell was calling the shots, in command of the British 30th Corps, whose principal infantry unit was the 50th Northumbrian Infantry Division. Bucknell's plan was to secure a beachhead, move west to capture the coastal town of Arromanches, send 1 detachment to meet up with the Americans from Omaha Beach, and then send another detachment to meet up with the Canadians from Juno. While the Regs were doing this, some 420 Royal Marine Commandos would advance inland and assault the harbour of Port-en-Besson. On the German side, The 352nd Infantry Division and elements of the 716th Static Infantry Division, commanded by Dietrich Kreis and Wilhelm Richter, would take the brunt of the Allied invasion at Gold, employing coastal batteries, mines, barbed wire, wooden stakes, and anti-tank obstacles. Following an air raid, Allied naval forces started bombarding the German-held coast at 5:30 am. Poorly shielded German artillery pieces were blown apart, but the casemated ones took very little damage and maintained defensive fire. After about 2 hours, amphibious landing craft disgorged Bucknell's ground forces on the landing zone at the sectors codenamed King and Jig. As soon as they hit the sand at King's sector, a casemated 88mm gun, positioned at the occupied commune of La Rivière, started blowing the landing parties limb from limb. In answer, a mine flail tank shot an explosive charge directly into the aperture of the casemated 88mm, silencing it for good. Flail tanks and armored bulldozers detonated mines and plowed through obstacles, carving a path for the infantry, which advanced and cleared the Germans from La Rivière and some other coastal settlements. The landing at the Jig sector was a bit of a mess. Currents pushed the men east and away from their intended landing spot, and the tide rose sooner than expected, bogging armored vehicles on the beaches and preventing them from clearing German mines and obstacles. The 75mm gun positioned at Le Hamel had a field day, until it was silenced at around 4 p.m. In this case, it was a well-aimed charge shot from an Avry tank that brought the troublesome German artillery piece down. The men fought house to house in Le Hamel and a few other towns along the coast, while some moved on Arromanches, which was in Allied hands by the end of the day, and where the Allies would soon construct an array of artificial harbours known as the Mulberry Harbours. As for the commandos, rough sea conditions saw them disembarking their landing vehicles farther east than they had intended. They got torn up on the beach as well, taking 76 casualties from mines, obstacles, and German fire. Run-ins with Germans along the way to Port-en-Bessin resulted in further delays, so much so that they couldn't make a move on the port on D-Day. Instead, they fought for control of Port-en-Bessin over the 7th and 8th, suffering a further 136 casualties, but ultimately claiming victory. According to Lieutenant General Sir Brian G. Horrocks, it is doubtful whether, in their long, distinguished history, the Marines have ever achieved anything finer. On the 6th of June alone, some 25,000 men and 2,100 vehicles landed at Gold. This came at a cost of some 1,000 casualties. German losses are unknown. Led by Canadian Major General Rod Keller, the plan at Juno was to land 2 brigades of the 3rd Canadian Division at the sectors codenamed Mike and Nan, from where they would assault Courcelles, Berneret, and Saint-Aubin. Once a beachhead was established, another Canadian Infantry Brigade, along with the British Royal Marine Commando Battalion, would land up and link up with British forces from Gold and Sword. Once they had done this, the 3rd would regroup and press further inland, hoping to reach the Caen-Bayeux Railway and capture Carpiquet Airfield west of Caen by the end of the day. Standing against Keller on the beaches were elements of the 716th Static Infantry Division, while the 21st Panzer Division awaited the Canadians southeast of Caen. As with the other beaches, Juno was sown with obstacles and sentineled by artillery pieces and machine gun nests. Early aerial bombardments by the Royal Canadian Air Force marked the start of the action at Juno, though they were largely ineffectual. In the words of the war diarist of the Royal Winnipeg Rifles, the bombardment, having failed to kill a single German or silence one weapon, the men had to storm their position cold and did so without hesitation. Before that, however, Allied naval forces picked up where the bombers left off, coming in close to shore to soften the Germans as well as they could in preparation for the Canadian infantry landing at 7:45 am. Due to rough seas and high tide, the landing craft reached the beach late and ran into mines and obstacles. Armored vehicles were delayed, leaving the men exposed to a stiff German defense. Canadian soldier John Wesley Poynton described what happened after his landing craft struck a mine. "We had to jump over the sides. Most of our group got safely on shore, but we had no transport. Our trucks were useless in the barge where the mine had blasted the landing ramp." The Royal Winnipeg Rifles and the Queen's Own Rifles took especially heavy casualties, with the latter suffering 143, the highest among all Canadian regiments. According to the archives of the Queen's Own Rifles, B Company landed 250 yards east of its objective, directly in front of an enemy pillbox, which inflicted 65 casualties within the first minutes. The assault depended on the resolve and courage of the remaining men to race across the beach to the seawall with no cover in between. Still, this initial force pushed through, clearing most of the German coastal defences, including those at Courcelles and Bernerie, within 2 hours and paving a way for the reinforcements. Saint-Aubin proved to be more of a handful, with the Germans preventing the Canadians from linking up with the British from Sword. A unit of Sherman tanks pushed all the way through to the Caen-Bayeux railway line, becoming the only Allied unit to reach its final objective on D-Day, while counterattacks by the 21st Panzer Division denied the Canadians Carpiquet Airfield and Caen. According to historian Mark Zulke, the Canadians ended the day ahead of either the US or British divisions, despite the fact that they landed last, and that only the Americans at Omaha faced more difficulty winning a toehold on the sand. For this, they suffered between 950 to 2,000 casualties, yet inflicted some 5,800 on the Germans, accounting for about 80% of the German starting strength. While Juno started terribly, things were a little easier for the British at Sword, who were under the command of Lieutenant General John Croker, and whose principal infantry force was Major General Tom Rennie's 3rd Infantry Division. With Sword being the closest landing site to the city of Caen, Rennie's primary objective was to advance on Caen and take it if possible. Opposing the British were the same German divisions which opposed the Canadians at Juno. As with the other beaches, Sword was sown with mines and other obstacles, and the Germans had built trenches, machine gun nests, and mortar pits further in. As with everywhere, artillery pieces sentineled this length of the French coast. Shells from an aerial and naval bombardment began softening the German defense at around 3 AM on D-Day, and the infantry followed at dawn, meeting heavy enemy fire. Major A. Rouse of the South Lancashire Regiment described it like this: "The boat crews had been ordered to go in at 4 knots and hit the beach hard. Out of the haze of smoke, underwater obstacles loomed up. We weaved in between iron rails and ramps and pickets with telemines on top like gigantic mushrooms. We seemed to be groping through a grotesque petrified forest. Mortar fire was coming down on the sands. An 88mm gun was firing along the line of the beach, and there was continuous machine gun and rifle fire. Immediately ahead of us, a DD tank, its rear end enveloped in flames, unable to get off the beach, continued to fire its guns. Still, 34 of the 40 amphibious duplex drive tanks, or Donald Duck tanks, designated to Sword, made it to the water, and at least 23 made it to shore, providing substantial cover for Rennie's 3rd Division, which quickly cleared the Germans from the beach. By 9:30 AM, 7 of the 8 exits from the beach had been opened up, allowing the men to begin their advance on Caen. Congestion from the sheer number of men and vehicles on the beach slowed the advance, however, and a D-Day assault on Caen in league with the 3rd Canadian Infantry Division seemed less and less likely. As we know from our section on the Canadians at Juno Beach, the 21st Panzer Division launched a counterattack, and an Allied assault on Caen did not take place on the 6th of June. It's unknown how many Germans became casualties defending Sword Beach, but the British managed to land almost 29,000 men and 223 tanks there on D-Day. This cost them 686 casualties. Of course, the Normandy landings were just the start of the broader Operation Overlord, a 3-month offensive that ended in hundreds of thousands dead and saw France liberated from the Germans. But what the Allies did after they seized the beaches is a topic for another day. For now, do you agree that the landing of Omaha tends to hog the D-Day spotlight a little bit? Did you know much about these other, less bloody D-Day landings before today? What about the Rangers' climb at Pointe du Hoc? Do you know anything about these landings that we didn't cover? As always guys, please feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments section below. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you learned something new.